Hope you enjoyed those SoCon opponents in Week 1 because Week 2 is officially here and Saturday night will be treated to a ranked matchup under the lights between Tennessee and NC State. Here to help us break down one of the biggest games of the weekend is Patrick Brown from GoVols 24/7 and Corey Smith from Pack Pride. Guys, it's the Duke's Mayo Classic in Charlotte. Let's tell you a little bit more about this matchup. The Vols and Pack have not played since 2012, but Tennessee did win that matchup 35-21, and Josh Heupel taking care of business in the non-con, winning 11 straight, while NC State has not fared well against SEC opponents, going 1 of 9 since the year 2000. But a fresh slate, excited for this game, and I'm excited about quarterbacks on both sides. So let's start there. How is each team feeling about the Week 1 performances they got from their men under center? Let's start with Patrick and Nico Iamaleava. What do you think of his performance?
Yeah, Emily, there's been a lot of excitement and anticipation about Nico from the fan base really since he committed back in the spring of 2022. And there's also been a lot of excitement and high expectations for him inside the program as well from Josh Heupel and the coaching staff and his teammates as well. And I think Nico showed a lot of the reasons why last week against Chattanooga, just the way he was able to add different elements to this offense that make it even harder to defend. This offense is already a challenge with the spacing and the tempo, but Nico was able to throw with accuracy and throw with anticipation. He was able to hit windows over the linebackers in front of the safeties, between zone defenders. The tempo they went with in the first half was particularly, they were going at a blistering pace. I think it was about 3.5 plays per minute, which is lightning fast. And that's hard to simulate in practice, and it's hard to play against as well. And so the way he was able to get some of those explosive pass plays back to the offense was a really nice sign to see for Tennessee coming off last season when some of those plays weren't necessarily there. I think the big question now is, okay, you did it against Chattanooga. That's an FCS team. Can you do it against an ACC opponent and on into the SEC? And I think there's a lot of reason to believe from Tennessee's standpoint that Nico has the ability to do that. This is a guy that, yes, he's a redshirt freshman. He just turned 20, I think, this week, and this is going to be his third start. But he does not play like a young guy and does not carry himself like a young guy and hasn't. So that's why there's a lot of excitement and anticipation for him. I think he's obviously been a celebrity for Tennessee fans for a while. He's pretty much probably a household name at this point, but this stage, Saturday night, has a chance for him to sort of be a bit of a coming out party for him on a national stage.
Yeah, and for Grayson McCall for NC State, it's a little bit different idea. Obviously, a guy that has 40 starts under his belt, but looked like, a little bit of an unpolished quarterback at times in the season opener against Western Carolina. He's passed for over 10,000 yards in his career and has been known for his accuracy, a nearly 70% passer, but had a few overthrows in the game, particularly a couple to Noah Rogers, Kevin Concepcion, guys that are expected to be massive weapons in this offense for NC State. But if there's one thing that you're not concerned about with Grayson McCall, it's being able to step up in these big moments. He's done it in the past, whether it was at Coastal Carolina against, you think back to that 2020 game against BYU. He's done it in big situations, been a 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. So there's a reason why he was asked to lead this offense for NC State. He still ended up throwing for over 300 yards. He has multiple weapons in Kevin Concepcion, Noah Rogers, Justin Jolie that stepped up in a big way, and then Jordan Waters that can help him. So when it comes to Grayson McCall, the expectation going into this game is to go out there, be the veteran that you're expected to be, and try to contend with this Tennessee defensive line.
You mentioned some of the weapons. I'm super excited about that matchup. These quarterbacks have so much fun to play with. You mentioned Casey Concepcion, 3 touchdowns in that opener? Seems like he's picking up just where he left off. But with those fun weapons comes some questions in the secondary for both of these defenses. There's a lot of similarities. So how does NC State combat Tennessee's weapons? And Corey, we'll start with you, vice versa.
Yeah, for the NC State side of things, they do have some veterans that are on the defensive side of the football, but they're new faces to NC State. D.K. Kaufman comes over from Auburn, a veteran that was there for several years, and then Jihad Carter, who was formerly the #1 safety in the country in the transfer portal in last year's cycle, comes over from Ohio State after having some issues in terms of injuries last year. But this secondary does have guys like Aiden White, Brandon Cisse that come back from last year. Brandon Cisse wasn't a starter, but was a backup that played a ton of snaps last year, and they have really high expectations for him going into the year. So as far as the secondary is concerned, those are the names to know. And then along the defensive line, Davin Vann is a guy that they expect to step up in a big way in this situation. Brandon Cleveland was a great run stopper for NC State last year, also a good pass rusher. So those two guys are the names to know along the defensive line. And then the linebacker is going to be the big question mark. Caden Fordham coming into the year, there was some thought, hey, he's going to be the leader for this middle linebacker, this linebacker crew, being the middle linebacker, wearing the headpiece for the first time for NC State ever. And then he leaves. He's ejected after 5 snaps against Western Carolina, so you didn't get to see him in action a ton. I think the big thing for them is forcing turnovers. This NC State team coming into the year ranked number 1 in the entire country when it comes to Power 4 programs in interceptions over the last 3 years with 51. So if they're able to force Nico Iamaleava into some mistakes, they have a chance to kind of win this game and push themselves ahead.
Yeah, Corey, looking at Tennessee's defense, I think the big question mark going into the season is still a question mark, and that's in a secondary that's been overhauled with 5 new starters from a season ago. There's a lot of youth, a lot of unproven guys, and NC State has some weapons that are going to test those guys. And Chattanooga didn't really do that last week with a lot of quick throws. And if you're Tennessee, I think the interesting part of this matchup, particularly in the secondary, is the reasons you would probably feel, for optimism in the secondary is for Tennessee is at cornerback. They brought in Jermon McCoy, who's an Oregon State transfer, who was their best defensive back in preseason camp. They should be getting Ricky Gibson back this week. He's another guy that has sort of been locked in as a starter throughout the offseason. But the guys that are probably going to be called upon to guard Kevin Concepcion and Justin Jolie, the tight end, are going to be those guys at star and at safety, where maybe they're a little bit more of a liability in coverage. And at that star position in particular, Tennessee lost Jordan Thomas, who was a junior that they had penciled in to be that starter. He went down to a knee injury, season-ending knee injury in the first week of preseason camp, so they plugged a couple new guys in there. Christian Harrison made his first start last week. He's Rodney Harrison's son, so he's got NFL bloodlines, but not a lot of experience in his 3rd year in the program. And freshman Boo Carter is a guy that they're really high on, but he's a freshman. This is going to be his first big game. He's going to be going against some guys that have played a lot of football and have proven it at a high level. So Tennessee's got some good things to feel good about on at linebacker with Keenan Peely, the 26-year-old veteran in the middle on the headset with Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, and obviously their defensive line is really good, but this is going to be the first true test of the secondary, and that group's going to have to step up and play well for Tennessee to have a good chance of winning on Saturday night.
I loved the honesty with Dave Doeren this week. It sounded like watching tape for him was bittersweet. He said it was really fun to watch Nico, but that probably this will be the best defensive front that they will see all season. High praise for Avala's squad. So, Corey, how do they stack up against it?
Well, they have a lot of experience coming back. You have 4 offensive line starters that returned from last season, and then Zeke Correll is the guy that's added there to the anchor position, comes over from Notre Dame. So they do have a ton of experience, and they were actually really good against the pass rush against Western Carolina. The biggest question mark for them was the run stopping. They weren't able to get anything going in terms of run blocking and getting the ball moving in the first half. Jordan Waters was able to find some success in the second half, but a lot of that was bouncing to the outside and not necessarily being able to go through the tackles. So if they're able to find some success there and be able to, we talked about this beforehand, kind of dink and dunk their way through this and wear down that defensive line, they have a chance here. The one, kind of gray area here that we haven't really talked about a lot is the fact that Grayson McCall does have some mobility. So yes, this offensive line needs to be good, but if they do let somebody through, is he able to step up in the pocket, scramble a little bit to get another play, kind of designed or get a guy free and get that opportunity? I know we're going to talk a lot about Nico being a guy that can move the football with his feet, but Grayson McCall is no slouch on his feet either. So I do think there's some ways to combat that defensive line, but yeah, it's definitely a daunting task for NC State going into it, especially what we saw this past week in terms of run blocking.
Yeah, Corey, that was something that Willie Martinez, Tennessee secondary coach, mentioned when I asked about McCall earlier in the week, is that, hey, this guy can make plays as a runner too. So Tennessee is well aware of that, and they're going to really rely on that defensive line to corral not only the run game that you talked about, but also keep McCall in the pocket and keep him from making plays as a scrambler and extending plays and throwing on the run as well. You look at the Tennessee defensive line, it's really deep. I think it's going to be hard to probably wear those guys down. I mean, they go legitimately 12 deep. They can roll 3 different lines in as they did in the first half. We really haven't seen them mix up and put their best pass rush package on the field yet. I think that's something we'll probably see for the first time on Saturday night. But that group starts with James Pierce Jr. He's a Charlotte native. This is going to be sort of a homecoming game for him. He only played 10 snaps in the first game. Chattanooga was throwing some cut blocks his way, and Tennessee had the game early on. They were rotating a bunch throughout the defense, and they kind of just said, we'll let him out next week. But Tennessee's got other guys throughout this defensive line that can make plays. Joshua Josephs is a guy that's had a really good offseason. He's played a lot for them the past 2 seasons, but they're hoping that the light has come on for him. They've got no more Norman Lott, who's a really good pass rusher in the middle, had 5.5 sacks last season. Tyree West seems like a guy who's coming along at that defensive end position. He made a couple of plays last week. And then you look at the strength in the middle. They've got big guys that can stop the run. Tennessee's been, I think, second in the SEC against the run over the past 2 seasons with Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator. They've got big bodies in there with Elijah Simmons, Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, all old veteran guys that have played a lot of football. And that's the problem for any offensive coordinator, particularly when you get in those 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 situations, is do you commit more attention to Pierce and leave one of those other guys one-on-one, or do you take a chance and a calculated risk and leave your tackles out there one-on-one with Pierce, who arguably could be the best pass rusher in the nation and certainly will be looking to make his imprint on this game on Saturday night. So that's a big challenge, and certainly Tennessee needs its defensive line to play really well to cover up some of the other potential deficiencies they have elsewhere on defense.
All right, so we're having some fun with these team previews. We simulated this game 20 times on EA College Football 25. This in no way applies to the actual game, but we just got so antsy. We wanted to see what it looks like. NC State actually won 14 of those matchups. As we know, Vols fans disagree with how they look in the video game. Vegas doesn't agree with that necessarily. But Patrick, what is the biggest key to pulling out a win in not this simulated game, but the very real game that will happen on Saturday?
You guys couldn't get the game simulated in Charlotte. You had to play it in Raleigh, I guess. Maybe that's why it was 14-20 in NC State's favor. No, I look at it to one aspect maybe on each side of the football for Tennessee. I think on offense, the offensive line has to play well. They have to protect Nico, keep him upright, keep him comfortable in the pocket. He can extend plays and run around and scramble, but they need to keep him upright. And we've seen mistakes by the offensive line, be it holding penalties, be it false starts, be it giving up sacks. That's a great way to get Tennessee out of sync. They're such a rhythm-based offense that sometimes negative plays can be hard for them to overcome, and those can stall drives. Defensively, it's going to be all about 3rd downs for me. We talked a lot about that the playmakers that NC State has at quarterback. They've got a veteran quarterback who's seen all the pressures that Tennessee can probably throw at him and all the coverages and all those things. And NC State's got some playmakers, and Tennessee's going to need their secondary and their linebackers in particular to hold up in coverage, be it man or zone. They're going to need that defensive line to speed McCall up and get him off of out of his rhythm. And if Tennessee's able to get off the field on defense, I think they have the offense to where if you're that group, you're getting off the field, you're thinking the next time you take the field, there's going to be 7 more points on the scoreboard. So if early in the game Tennessee can get some 3rd down stops, that's a chance for them to maybe create some separation on the scoreboard and maybe get NC State out of its game plan a little bit.
Yeah, when it comes to the offensive side of the football for NC State, the key to winning this game is very similar to what Patrick talked about. This offensive line for NC State has to hold up. We talked about that defensive line for Tennessee. Yes, they have some big bodies, and obviously James Pierce Jr. is going to be very tough for NC State to contend with. But in order to win this game, NC State's going to have to be able to keep Grayson McCall upright and be able to get some shots down the field. I talked about the dink and dunk, but I think that's the way you start the game. You have elite playmakers like Kevin Concepcion, Justin Jolie, and then I would even throw Jordan Waters in there as guys that they can throw some short routes to and be able to kind of win the game that way, or win some plays to be able to set up a deep shot to a Noah Rogers or Dakari Collins down the field. So there's opportunities there if they can hold up along the defensive line. And then on the defensive side of the football, it's all going to come down to trying to get Nico Iamaleava into making some mistakes. I talked about earlier the interceptions for NC State. The takeaway bone is something they take a lot of pride in. It's something where they have some experience coming back. I mentioned Aiden White, Brandon Cisse earlier. Those guys are chomping at the bit after missing some opportunities this past week. Caden Fordham, the first play of the game this past week, ball hit him right in the hands and he dropped it. Which could have potentially been a pick six. So this defense is constantly in the right place at the right time. It's about making those plays and not allowing this pressure, this moment to get to them. So if they're able to force Nico Iamaleava into some mistakes, get up early and force them to, even push the tempo more and limit some of those mistakes for NC State, I think they have a chance if they win the turnover battle to win this game on Saturday night.
Certainly hope that takeaway bone can make the trip to Charlotte. Thank you both so much for the great preview. Looking forward to this one. You can keep it locked in to Go Vols 24/7 for all things Tennessee football, and Pack Pride for everything you need to know about NC State. These two writers you just heard from and their whole crew will have you covered all season long.